American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. This is your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. That's my website. You can go there and catch your spouse cheating online. We can trace their email address back to online dating websites. And you can also go there and get a copy of my book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator. If this is the first time you're hearing this show, if you're new, please check out OppermanReport.com, and we have there a members section with all new kind of content, all new shows that aren't played either live Friday night or on Saturday afternoons. It's all exclusive content available only to members. That's at OppermanReport.com. We also have a bookstore with all of our guests. Whenever they have a book, we put their book up there in the bookstore. Okay. Let's see. So, we're having a little trouble getting a hold of our guest, St. John Hunt, who's the author of Jeb and the Bush Crime Family, the inside story of an American dynasty. But as soon as we get him on the line there, I'm sure Danny's going to let me know. So otherwise, I'll just fill up this time here with my wonderful voice here. Keep everybody entertained here as we try and get a hold of St. John Hunt. So, let's see. I got two new shows up in the members section. One is Brendy Richards, who is from South Africa, and she has a radio show on Red Talk. What is that? Red State Radio Talk. Yeah, Red State Talk Radio, and her show is called Truth About South Africa. Now that's up in the members section right now. I just did this interview this week. Fascinating woman, the beautiful blonde, blue eyes, lives in South Africa over there on this big property, has horses and stuff. And so, we were talking about what's going on over there since the end of apartheid. And one of the things she had described to me was how they have these voodoo witch doctors over there. Who have been given honorary medical degrees by the government. So they're legitimized. They're just as much of a doctor as a regular doctor, that you would have here in the United States, okay, but over there. So they can write absent notes for their patients, to their employers and stuff. And one of the things that they do in their voodoo ceremonies is they have concoctions with animal blood and animal bones and brains, and also too human blood and human body parts and stuff in this concoction that people drink, that they give in, and they do their ceremonies, okay? So I was trying to figure out, how does this work? And she was telling me how they pay $100,000 for a human head, for a decapitation that they can use in these ceremonies. So I was trying to figure out how this works. Is it like hidden away? Or, do you have to go through the black market to find these people and stuff like that? But she says, no, you see them. No, she says, no, you see them walking down the street when she's driving to work. You can see them walking down the street, with their voodoo equipment and stuff. So one of the people she was telling me about that had gone down there and did one of these ceremonies was Michael Jackson, the king of pop, okay? That he went down there and did one of these blood ceremonies with the human blood and the animal blood and stuff like that. So a really interesting interview with Brendy Richards over there in the Opperman Report members section. Oh, boy, we're going to have that hum. Okay. Oh, there you go. Okay. Another guest I had this week was Christopher Brennan. Okay? and he wrote a book about the fall of the Arab Spring, from revolution to destruction. So now he's up in the members section too as well. Now, there was a lot of good stuff in there. And he discussed about how the whole Arab Spring that looked here in the media to be some kind of an organic uprising and revolution was actually controlled by obviously CIA interests. And this organization called the NED, I forget what the initials stand for. But and he laid out a very good case for this, which I agree with. Coincidentally, I don't know how many people are listening on American Freedom Radio are familiar with this story. I've told about my investigation into the Palin family, Sarah Palin and Todd Palin. But I've often mentioned during that, when I described that investigation, that I was infiltrated, my life was infiltrated by various people that I felt were intelligence agents, okay? And not just, I had assumed that I would run across people, from the GOP, fixers, and, those kind of types. But I never bargained for running into agents from foreign governments trying to infiltrate into my life. And one of them was this woman, this Asian woman, who I believe was part of the Chinese intelligence agency. And one of the reasons why I think so is because when I was sitting down talking to her, she totally, inserted herself into my life around the time I was right in the thick of this Sarah Palin investigation. And she contacted me, and one of the things she showed me was on her cell phone is that she had been in Egypt during the Arab Spring. And she showed me videos on her cell phone of her riding in a train, and people were shooting at the train. And I asked her, I says, well, what would make you go there to Egypt during this time of unrest? And her explanation to me was that it was because the tourists, the airfares were cheap, and the tourism, the hotels were cheap, and it was a good deal for tourists. And that's what she tried to pawn off on me, but I never believed that for a second. So we got into a lot of different stuff, and it kind of confirms a lot of things that I talk about all the time about General Wesley Clark and how he describes the U.S. policy since the Clintons has been to create, destabilize the Mideast and create chaos and disruption over there. And that's a lot of stuff we got from our friend there, Christopher Brennan, author of Fall of the Arab Spring, From Revolution to Destruction. Let's see. Last night, I had a guest on. I do a Friday night show, too, on another station. You can find all these shows in the archives for free on Ed Opperman YouTube channel, or Spreaker.com, iHeartRadio, and all these places have archives. But if you just Google Opperman Report, you can pretty much find all my archives. And there's a bunch of them out there for free, too. A lot of free shows we've done. We've done 2 previous shows with St. John Hunt, who is the son of the Watergate burglar, E. Howard Hunt. And as you may know, E. Howard Hunt has also made a deathbed-type confession on video, claiming that he was part of the team, the bench warmers, involved in the JFK assassination. So we've gone over that with E. Howard Hunt, with St. John Hunt a couple of times. I had him on twice. This would have been our 3rd time. Previously, we had another. Oh, hey, we got St. John. Hey, very good, very good. Danny, I love you. You're a great guy. Danny boy, I love you. St. John, are you there? I can't hear anybody. Is anybody there?
Can you hear me?
Hey, how are you, bro? You there?
Yeah.
Hey.
Good, yes. Can you hear me?
I hear you good. I hear you good.
Good. Yeah, nice to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, no way, man. You know I love you. Let me ask you a question now. Is this the first interview you're doing about this new book?
Yes, this is the first.
Okay, great. I got a scoop here then, okay? Now, St. John Hunt, why don't you tell the audience about yourself? Who is St. John Hunt?
Well, there's several St. John Hunts, but the one we're interviewing tonight, I would have to say, I'm probably mostly known as the eldest son of my infamous father, E. Howard Hunt, and the reason I became someone who interviewers would like to talk to. It's because of his deathbed confession, which happened around 2007. And it was important for me to bring this to the attention of the media and the public. And so I wrote a book called Bond of Secrecy. And then last year I had my second book published, which was about my mother, called Dorothy. And then since then I've met and been working with Roger Stone, who's quite a character, rather well-known himself. And we worked on a book about the Bush family. And so that's just breaking into the media at this very moment, called Jeb and the Bush crime family. It's available online now, and it'll hit the newsstands and the bookstores next week.
Okay, great. And I saw too there was a little blurb. I guess it was the National Enquirer had a little piece about the book.
Oh, did it? I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, you didn't see that, huh? It talked about how Jeb, according to your book that you wrote, right? You know, it's funny too. This is the second time I had a guest on who was in the National Enquirer and didn't know it. Okay. Also, the first one was I wrote a book about Bill Cosby, and I just had her on recently. But yeah, it said that Jeb was snorting coke to celebrate his brother's election. Yeah,
well, you know, Roger is the kind of author. He really just goes for the jugular. Because he does his research very thoroughly, as I do mine. My part in the book, I wrote everything concerning Samuel Bush, who was the original, the OG, the original gangster of the Bush family, starting in pre-World War I. And I wrote everything about Samuel, and then his son Prescott, and then his son George H.W., and then into George W. Wrote some of that, and then Roger pretty much handled all the material on Jeb and a lot of it on George W. Well, but I took on the challenge of defining the events that created Jeb Bush and George W. Bush, because it's very much akin to an American mafia family. I find that when you have a criminal organization that's based, you know, with a family like the mafia, whether it's Sicilian or American, you have a predetermined set of circumstances with which the young children grow up in, you know, the sons. And the original foundation of that can be found, say, for example, the Bonanno family, the American Bonanno crime family, started in Sicily with Salvatore Bonanno way back in the early 1900s when he emigrated to the United States. And then he hands the criminal empire down to his son, and then that man hands it down to his son, Bill Jr. And we have the very same family structure with the Bush family, starting with Samuel Bush, and then, as I said, carried on through each son as they come up in the world. And I found with the Bush family that as each son takes the helm of the family, you know, takes the reins, becomes the new king of that family, the Bush family, that the amount of criminal enterprise they're involved in increases dramatically. In other words, these kids, Prescott, George H.W. Bush, they then have learned through watching their parents that crime does pay, and this is a very dangerous thing that's been going on with the Bush family, and there's been no other family really quite like it. I mean, the Kennedys had that similar sort of dynasty, but I can't really say that the crimes of the Kennedy family even come close to the crimes of the Bush family.
Well, don't you think that part of that could be because of the addition of the CIA connections?
Certainly, absolutely. It's because as each generation comes up and takes its what they feel is their rightful position in their family, they've learned to corrupt as many surrounding entities that will come in to their larger scope as each generation progresses. And that's a really good point. It is in part because in terms of the Kennedys, we don't have a union between the CIA and the Kennedys. In fact, we had what's really the opposite. We have almost a stalemate. We have a war, if you will, between CIA and the Kennedys. But in the case of the Bush crime family, we certainly have an infiltration and corruption, and that's a very good point. That's one of the things that makes the Bush family so dangerous as opposed and different than the Kennedy family.
Well, why don't you give us a history lesson? Why don't we start with the first Bush you started investigating and give us an idea? Because I think everybody knows about Prescott Bush and his Nazi ties and stuff like that, which we'll get into. Okay, but let's start with the one I never heard of. There was one older than him. What do you have there?
Well, Samuel Bush, certainly, he started out fairly simply and got a job with the railroads. But then Buckeye Steel was where he started working, and they originally manufactured the links, the couplers that joined the two trains. That would join one train to another, and they did very well for themselves. But in I'd say about 1914, 1913, they acquired acquisition of Remington Steel, which was a fairly straightforward union between Buckeye Steel and Remington Steel. However, Remington Steel was one of the largest ordnance makers in the United States of America. And so Samuel then became a leader and an instrumental person in the direction that Remington Steel was headed in. And by 1916, for the First World War, Remington changed its name to the Remington Small Arms Ordnance and Ammunition Corporation, and they ended up producing and selling 67% of all the rifles used in World War I by the United States, Britain, and Russia. And shortly after the War Industries Board, at the end of World War I, which they had been working with, they had a profit in excess of $200 million. And shortly after that, in 1917, under Woodrow Wilson, the U.S. Congress passed a very important legislation entitled Trading with the Enemies Act. And the objective of that was to stop American corporations, both industrial and banking, from trading with our enemies and the allies of our enemies during World War I. But unfortunately, Samuel Bush and Remington Steel paid no mind to this. And even by 1934, when there was a special committee that was held in Washington, D.C. on investigation of the munitions industry, it was also called the Nye Committee. Samuel Bush was labeled as one of the merchants of death for his role in supplying arms to 75% of World War I combatants on both sides. So it really started with Samuel Bush way back then, with his realization that war was an opportunity to gain financially, that war was something that should be viewed in a positive aspect, and one that should be leapt upon with great vigor to use for the personal gain of himself and his fellow cronies.
That's fascinating. And you're saying that he just came from a guy that was working for the railroads and started manufacturing those couplers.
Right. That's right.
I wonder what gave him the idea, who he came into contact with, or what gave him the idea to say, "Hey, get into the arms business. Look at all the money you can make over there."
Well, it was the fact that when he was working for Buckeye Steel, which at the time, as I said, was building the couplings, there was an acquisition that had occurred, and he was offered the chance to move forward with the company. And as a result, over a couple of years, he was put in a position where he was then working with the War Industries Board just prior to World War I, and Remington Arms Manufacturing then was providing 67% of all the rifles used in World War I, and they continued this very profitable manufacturing for themselves, and even expanded upon that throughout World War I, and that didn't stop even in World War. Even when Sam Bush was labeled publicly as a merchant of death, although he was never officially prosecuted for it, but the Nye Committee in 1934, its final report that was issued said that Samuel Bush was one of the merchants of death for his role in heading up the arms supplying for 75% of World War I combatants on both sides. This did not prevent young Prescott, who took his position in the manufacturing world and with Union Banking Corporation. So, like father, like son, like father. And as you mentioned, that each growing generation becomes worse because of the corruption that the field of corruption grows greater and greater. This is when the original military corporation union really started in the very early 1930s with Prescott Bush. Certainly the genesis was with Samuel Bush. There was no other huge manufacturing company that made small arms or ammunition other than Remington Steel. Remington Steel, Remington Arms. And this was the genesis of the military industrial corporation, which now is apparently what runs our entire country, I guess. So, this goes way back. So we have something it has its creation 1915, 1916, 100 years ago. This year.
Well, yeah. Wow. Now, if I go out and buy a Remington shotgun, does any of that money go into the Bush hands today?
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting question, Ed. I really don't know, but I'll have to do some research on that.
Yeah, because I wonder if they would give up all their stock and all their holdings. Probably not. They'd keep some.
Well, no. As a matter of fact, I think there's a point where they did divest themselves. It was in the 50s, and there was another committee formed under the Trading with the Enemies Act that froze all the shares of Union Banking Corporation, which was where the profits from Samuel Bush ended up in through Prescott. His son Prescott became one of the heads of Union Banking Corporation, which was formed in 1924 in New York. And this was a banking corporation which was really a front to handle the interests of a German manufacturer named Fritz Thyssen. He was president of German Steel Trust, the largest steel trust in Germany at the time, and this was pre-Hitler. However, Thyssen became Hitler's main financier and used his associations with Prescott Bush, who was a lawyer at Brown Brothers Harriman and also one of the heads of Union Banking Corporation, to set up this Union Banking Corporation as a front to finance Hitler's war machine, because it was obvious to the Harriman people and Brown Brothers and certainly Prescott Bush, that another war was brewing. And just as Prescott's father had done, Samuel, they geared themselves up to support as many participants in the war as possible, both American and German and Russian. So they ended up pretty much doing the same thing that Samuel did. Prescott went right ahead with funneling $7 million was paid in 1933 to Hitler, and prior to that, $10 million was transferred to Hitler through Union Banking Corporation. But to answer your question, yes, all the funds that were involved in that were frozen. However, after Fritz Dyson died in 1951, all the funds were released, and Prescott Bush ended up getting about $1.5 million in 1951. So the 1951 $1.5 million was pretty much a lot of money.
Now it's interesting. You're saying that Harriman was involved in this too. Now who was that? A.J. Harriman from the Union Pacific Railroad, right?
That's right. See, this is the same original. This is another family that made its bones. I'll say in the railroad business. Railroad business was, the primary exponent of American steel up to that point, and there was a lot of money made by these people, and so they started divesting their huge earnings into as many different smaller corporations as possible. And certainly one of the biggest examples of this would be the Union Banking Corporation in 1924. So Harriman and Bush were in league with each other in the Union Banking Corporation.
Yeah, people need to realize how significant this whole thing with these railroads was back in those days. Because all these companies nowadays, like Western Union, that all came from the railroads. The railroads ran the first telegraph. The railroads created the time zones. That was because of the railroads. The railroads had huge amount of power. So Western Union Telegraph started. Then it was Western Union Telegrams with the money, with all the money transfers and stuff. So this is, and then it went to oil because they were transporting the oil back and forth. So the unions were what do you call it? The railroads were incredibly powerful back in those days.
Yeah, they really, this isn't just a conspiracy history here. This is all these situations with for example, the merger of Buckeye Steel with Remington Arms. These are all factual statistics and things that actually happened and are easily verified. Now, ultimately, there should be no really reason why two corporations shouldn't come together. But when the result of that is used to finance your enemies in a world war or any type of war, then there has to be some kind of oversight. But in these days, there was very little oversight, and now it seems as though we talk about sunshine laws and oversight and things like that. A lot of these military couplings with huge industrial corporations are almost just a matter of fact. It's like they're not even questioned anymore. But the rise of the military-industrial complex, as Eisenhower spoke so eloquently in his last speech when he was saying, we have to be careful of never before in history has there been such a huge military-industrial complex, and he was warning us that that's the union of corporatization of the military.
Did I lose you?
World.
Yeah, which today, just think about it today, it's gotten even more extreme when you have like Halliburton and all these the outsourcing of all these military services, like the phone services and the lunches and the foods and the laundry, and we're paying thousands and thousands of dollars to launder these guys' uniforms when they used to do it themselves, in house, like for nothing.
Right. I think you're extremely well educated and knowledgeable about the modern examples of the military-industrial union, which was formed way back in 100 years ago by Samuel Bush. So, like Halliburton is a perfect example. The war in Iraq is almost the war itself becomes almost as an incidental. It's like oh yeah, but the real money is made in all the ventures that support the war, support the soldiers, as you said, the laundry, the lunches, the medical supplies, the armaments, the tanks, the bulletproof vests. These are all lobbied for when the military puts out the word that they want to get they want to get people to they want to get companies to give them the best price possible on 5 million bulletproof vests or whatever. There's a huge payoff situation, and in many instances, Halliburton is the shadow corporation, which then owns and controls some of the smaller front corporations. But a lot of the money modernly in modern times is going to places like Halliburton. So we have a huge conflict of interest if one of Halliburton's chief CEOs, although officially resigned from Halliburton, his Secretary of State or head of the War Department or something. So this whole cronyism thing started way back then with Samuel Bush through Prescott Bush.
Well, come on, St. John. You're starting to sound like Bernie Sanders. You're not alleging that these people are doing anything wrong, are you?
No, I'm not at all. No, because I want to live a few more years. I don't want to be messed around with.
Now, Prescott Bush.
This whole experience was very new to me. I mean, I'm only an author of 2 books, and they were very personal books, Bond of Secrecy and Dorothy. And I wrote them and only know about what I experienced firsthand in my life with my mother and my father. And for some bizarre reason, and I still can't really get my head around it, sometimes I just think, I stop and I go, wow, I mean, really, I was that person's son. I was that person's son. My dad was that person, and this is what happened. And I just sit there kind of like for a moment, like, really? Why was it me? Or, it had to be somebody, I guess. But so when Stone, I met him two years ago in last November in Dallas when we both spoke at the JFK convention, their conference. I was, my hair already was up, a little bit because I was a little jealous of him. I had written about LBJ's involvement in the death of JFK in my book Bond of Secrecy, yet it got very little press coverage. And that was almost expected. But then along comes this person I never heard of that used to work with Richard Nixon named Roger Stone, and all of a sudden he's all over the news. He's on CBS, he's on Fox News, he's on, CNN, and I'm like, who the hell is this guy, and why the hell is he getting so much publicity? His book called The Man Who Killed Kennedy, LBJ and the Assassination of JFK, was getting huge amount of press and media attention. And I, quite honestly, and I told him this later, I said, well, I was a little bit riled up about that. So when I found out that he was one of the speakers at the conference in November, 2014, I was a little bit miffed, and I was sitting in the bar one evening at the conference in Dallas, and in walks Roger Stone, and he's across the room. I see him walking in the door, and I go, oh my God. Should I run? Should I hide? What the hell? What am I going to say to this guy? I'm freaking pissed, a little bit. He walks right up to me, and he goes, you're St. John Hunt, right? And I said, yeah. And he goes, and I said, and you are? And he goes, Roger Stone here. And I said, okay. He bought me a drink. We sat and talked, and, he's very charming, and everything just all the the stress and the tension just melted very, very quickly. Found out he lived in Fort Lauderdale. I live in Fort Lauderdale, and Roger and I become very fast and furious friends. We're like the brothers that neither of us ever had, and he offered me to come on board and write for him. So I put a lot of time into his Clinton's War on Women book, and he really likes my writing style. So then he said, how would you feel about working on a book about the Bush family? And I said, are you serious? And he goes, yes, your name will be right up front with mine, Roger Stone, St. John Hunt. And I said, I'd be delighted. I mean, Roger really reached out to me, and he basically, in some ways, saved my life in many ways. I had been working, and I was 59 at the time. I'd been working jockeying cars at the airport. And that's a very difficult job, very strenuous physically. And, you have to run to get the cars, you have to park them perfectly, and you have to run back. And 59 years old, I was worn out, but I kept doing it. That's the only job I had. And we're driving in his car one day in Fort Lauderdale. He goes, so, what do you do for a living? I go, like, I'm a car jockey. And he just almost slammed on the brakes, and he's like, what? And I said, I'm a car jockey. And he goes, don't you know who you are? Don't you realize, that you shouldn't be working that kind of job? And I said, not really. So he gave me a job. I started writing for him, and then we got the Bush book done. And he was really happy with my writing style and the amount of research that I put into it, because I feel that I'm just not going to copy a footnote that somebody else wrote. I'm going to go further than that and deeper than that to find out what the source of the footnote is and beyond as often as I can. So he's, and I understand when you write a book, you have a responsibility. If you make accusations, whether it's about Clinton, Hillary Clinton, or Bill Clinton, whether he's a rapist or whatever, you better have your ducks sitting up right. And they better be totally in order. And these accusations you make, because Roger, to me, is just goes for the jugular. I mean, I don't know if you read any of the Clinton book that he wrote, but
I had
really serious. Have you or not?
Yeah, I had Bob Morrow on the show, and I didn't.
Oh, you did? Oh, good.
Yeah, I didn't know you were involved in that book. Otherwise, I would have had you on instead. Because Bob.
Well, I put about 20,000 words into that book, but they didn't use a lot of what I wrote, because my job for that book was to write about Hillary's financial misdeeds, her illegal fundraising and campaign issues, and really the story of how she started out in the Watergate era, working and then being fired for misappropriation of files and on through Whitewater and things like that. They didn't use a lot of that. And I think because just prior to the publication of Clinton's War on Women, there was this other major book that came out about the Clintons' financial misdeeds specifically. And so I don't think they wanted to repeat ground that had just been covered. And I think it was also a test to see how quickly I could come up with word, and how deeply I researched it, and how solid I was in my footnoting. And I think I passed the test, and Roger was happy with what I did, although they didn't use most of it. But it was more like a test. But Robert Morrow, he's an awesome researcher. That guy whom I've never met, but we correspond through emails. What's he like?
Well, you know what, man? I tell you something. I've had him on twice, and you're right. He's a great researcher, but the audience didn't like him. He didn't. At the second interview, the audience didn't come off very well, and we got a lot of complaints. But I like him personally. We chat on Facebook and stuff, and then we comment back and forth. And I know he's an abrasive guy, on the internet. He didn't come off very likable that night. But the information is great. Now let me ask you a question though about Roger Stone. Now, do you think maybe that now he was a Watergate dirty trickster, and digging up dirt on the opposition, right? Do you think he knew your dad or your godfather?
I know that he didn't know my dad. Roger Stone never met E. Howard Hunt, but he did have some interaction, I believe, with my godfather, William F. Buckley Jr. Possibly. I've never asked Roger, but I've read that Roger was part of some of these groups like Young Americans for Freedom and things like that arose up in the 70s and 80s. He's a pretty fascinating guy. Always seemed to have been involved in politics. I met his mother, who's like 99 years old or something recently, and she's very sharp and quick-witted and a lovely person. And she talked about how Roger, even at the age of 12, was completely consumed by politics. And so this is a man, to me, whose brain is like a machine. Roger is like a unrelenting machine. He can spew out facts and dates and events and times and places and people with just the most awesome ability. And this is because he's so single-mindedly invested in the things that he loves to talk about and to write about, and that's about politics, and specifically about corruption in politics. When Roger smells something that doesn't smell quite right, he'll go after it, and he will go after it with the diligence and a ferocity that I've rarely seen. And he just doesn't hold back any punches. And he, I don't know. I definitely don't have the same mindset as he does. But that's what makes Roger Stone, and makes me a slightly different person. Because for this Bush book, I never wrote anything that I wasn't particularly interested in. I mean, my two books were about my parents, and that's all I wrote. And so for the Bush type of writing, I had to learn a completely different writing style, and I had to invest myself in trusting Roger that there was some fire where the smoke was, and true to Roger, there was a fire where the smoke was, and I got very much into researching this Bush situation because I had no idea. I just don't pay attention to conspiracy theories, whether Bush was involved in the Kennedy assassination, George H. Bush Sr., and I still don't believe that he was. But there's a lot of stuff on the internet that you have to be really careful. You just have to be really careful. And I mean, there was this whole thing that I researched quite deeply about the near coup d'état on Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And that Bush was part of this coup that was being engineered with, against FDR to get him deposed and put another form of power in. And I just really found circumstantial evidence, but then deeper than that, I didn't find any actual evidence that Prescott Bush was involved in a near coup d'état against FDR. And this is something that's very favored on YouTube. Lots of YouTube documentaries on this coup d'état and how Prescott was involved. But I went back to the source, which came out of England, a researcher, and there's nothing really linking that. And I said that in my book, and I said to Roger, I said, this is not going to be something that maybe you want to hear, but in my opinion, this is baseless. This is something that goes beyond fact and starts blending into the sort of conspiracy type of thing where people who don't like the Bush family or don't like the Bush, don't like George Bush as a president or a CIA director or whatever, are throwing out because he was a banker and other bankers got together and tried to depose FDR and so forth and so on. But I found no validity in it, and I'm going to put that in my writing. I don't know if it's come out in the book. I've yet to see a final copy of this book, so I don't know what it looks like, to tell you the truth. It's kind of interesting in itself.
You know what? I'm so happy to hear you say that because I think YouTube is one of the worst things out there, honestly, because there's so much crap put up on YouTube. And so many times, even like a couple, in the past couple of weeks even, I'm reporting on stuff that's going on up at that standoff in Oregon. People that I know personally, or the Sarah Palin case. It's stuff that I know firsthand, and then someone will say to me, "Oh, Ed, you don't watch this YouTube video." What?
Oh yeah, watch the YouTube video. Yeah, and then you're going to go online and it was this incredible statement that you're making this accusation or whatever, and go, "Oh yeah, my source." A caller calls in. "Oh yeah, my source is a YouTube video." Right.
I know, but there's a lot of that out there, man. But I want to ask you a couple questions. So now your full-time living right now is working for Roger Stone?
Yes, it is.
Okay, excellent. Now Roger Stone today is working unofficially, I guess. He's an advisor to Donald Trump.
He's. Could you repeat that again? He officially what?
Okay. He was previously Donald Trump's campaign manager. Then he resigned, and now he's unofficially an advisor. But he's a daily advisor. Am I correct?
Yes, you are correct. He and Donald Trump have been close friends for probably over 20 years. Roger's been to the baptism of some of Donald Trump's children, and they go way back. They have Roger's. I asked him about Donald, what kind of guy he was, and very, very. As I probably should have already known, he's very much a man to himself. And Roger spent about I would say 6 to 8 weeks living up in New York. Very recently, when I was working on the Bush stuff, Roger was up in New York advising Donald Trump on various campaign issues and issues of how to present yourself and what facts are relevant and how you should behave and things like that. Pretty much giving like a charm school, but also an informative way that Trump could handle himself and what facts were pertinent. Because as I said, Roger's brain is like a machine about historical events, times, places, dates, and things like that. And I think they had their falling out. I believe, because as Roger told me, as soon as Donald gets in front of the camera, all bets are off. Everything that Roger schooled Donald in just went out the window, and Donald just becomes Donald. He just says the things he says, and he does what he does. And Roger felt that he had spent 6 to 8 weeks up there every single day, and it was wasted. And so he came back down. Of course, Donald says he fired Roger, and Roger says he resigned. But I think that was a mutually agreed. Probably Roger saying, "Well, if you're not going to use all the things that I've been schooling you with, then what's the point of me being up here and being part of your campaign?" And of course, and they're still very good friends. They communicate quite often, and I'm a little scared now of Donald Trump. For a brief moment, I was sort of enthralled with the idea that this guy was an outlaw and that he wasn't beholden to the big corporations, the big pharma and oil and Wall Street and so forth. And he may or may not be, but yes, Donald and Roger have been and still are very good close friends.
Okay, but do you want to give an endorsement right now? Who do you endorse? I
don't think so. Well, I'm looking more and more, although it's a sad state of affairs. I think Bernie is my man because Obama broke my heart. Really, I have to be honest and say that, because I believed when he said yes, we can. I don't know if I was naive or whatever, but I mean, I believe that he was going to shake up the status quo, and it turned out that not only didn't he do that, but he increased and supported every single thing that George Bush had done, and this was shocking to me. This was absolutely shocking, and it broke my heart, really. But Bernie, I believe, I just don't think he really is going to end up as president, because he's too much of a maverick. I mean, it's one thing to say that you want to have a constitutional revolution. You want to have a revolution in the way things are done and all this stuff, and that's truly what we need. But you have to be able to gain the confidence and the support of members of the Senate and Congress. Otherwise, nothing is going to get done. as was proven in Obama's first and second terms. I mean, he may have had these idealized, feelings about, that we can't do this, and we have to change Wall Street, we have to change the corporate stranglehold that they have on government and so forth. But when the House and the Senate are a majority of Republicans, you cannot get anything done. So, and I fear that if Bernie gets elected, that's what's probably going to happen, because he's such an outsider, he's such a maverick, and his words are so truthful and so honest and so much what we need. I think that it's just too far for the House and Senate to support him, and I think another 4 years of nothing getting done is just cannot happen. So then, where does that leave us? Hillary Clinton?
Well, no. Well, let me encourage you about Bernie, because I'm definitely a Bernie. Yeah, I'm Bernie 100%. Now, first of all, Obama was taking money from the same people Hillary's taking money from. He was taking money from the same people.
Right, Wall Street, everybody.
Right. So, yeah, obviously, and Obama, too, his first job out of college was a CIA front company. So I believe Obama was CIA. Now, Bernie, when Bernie became mayor in Birmingham, Vermont, it was the same thing. The city council was totally against him. But the next year, the next election, he was able to bring it in and fill it up with his own people. In fact, they called them the Sandinistas, is what they called them. He brought in his own cadre. Yeah. Short the firing squads. Okay, so I believe he can do the same thing with Congress. I believe even in this year we can bring in a more progressive Congress. And listen, we got to fight. We got to keep moving in that direction. You know what I mean? And we got 3 million people donating to Bernie right now. Small donations. Go to these rallies, man. They're smart people. The people at the rallies know what's going on. They're tuned in, and everyone's moving in the correct direction. I say let's keep pushing. All of us, we got a shot. Let's take it.
No, I totally, wholeheartedly agree with you. We cannot give up, regardless of whether we think the outcome is going to be a success or a failure. We have to show the strength of the average American citizen who is just completely fed up and tired of being taken advantage of by that 1% or half of 1% elite, the corporate CEO and moguls. It's this whole stranglehold that they have. We have to stand up and fight. When I was a kid, we did that by going out on the streets.
Right.
And I remember in Washington, D.C., we went out on the streets, we protested, and we brought our Molotov cocktails under our jackets. And that's the way we did things in the 60s. And I know that the 60s accomplished a lot of things that would not have been accomplished at that time. I know the pressure we put on Nixon to end the war in Vietnam was tactical. It was real. You could feel it. You could see it. Those demonstrations at Kent State and the lives that those kids lost, that meant something back in the day. And I'm 61, so I not only remember those times, but I was there. I was on the street at a very young age, 14, 15 years old. I went down to the mall in D.C., and I protested, and I ran as the crowds were running from the cops and the tear gas. So I know, and I totally agree with you. We cannot stand idle and have any doubts about Bernie Sanders. I mean, he is, thank God, he's alive and in good health. Thank God he is the one person that can save us. Literally, I feel that down to my bones.
No, I'm 53 years old, and I've been an activist since I was in high school. Again, I was with the Yippies in New York City. I was a member of the Yippies. I think I told you the whole story. I was friends with A.J. Wardman and stuff like that, who had your father's picture in the front of the Overthrow magazine, that kind of stuff, I got to tell you, I am convinced that Bernie would run with your endorsement. The son of the Watergate burglar is now endorsing Bernie Sanders. I think they would love that.
Wouldn't that be? That would just be so crazy. Sure, I mean, I will publicly support and endorse Bernie if there's any way that could get out to the press. I would certainly do it. I was really pleased with Suzanne Sarandon, who publicly endorsed Bernie, and I just wish all these other rich rock and roll stars and all these movie stars that are supposed to be so liberal and so leftist, I don't hear anybody coming out and supporting Bernie. I don't see any concerts being arranged that the money would go to the Bernie Sanders campaign. These guys have got to quit talking about how cool they are and how liberal they are and really do something to show that they're in support of Bernie.
St. John Hunt, we got a break coming up. We got St. John Hunt, author of the book, Jeb, The Bush Crime Family, The Inside Story of an American Dynasty. We'll be right back after this message.
All right, cool.
Yeah, hey, man, I got Bernie coming on the show.
Bernie Sanders?
Yes.
When?
Well, before February 20th.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So I'm going to have to tape it, but I'm going to get at least a good 15, 20 minutes with him.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Okay, I better run to the bathroom.
All right. All right, Ed, we're getting ready to come back.
Thank you.
Actually, we still have about 35, 40 seconds.
Okay.
Not fun, is it?
Oh, they created a fantastic alternative media source during an era of bad, manipulative, and infiltrated mainstream and alternative media shows and scam.
Okay, well, apart
and free education, free information, free podium for broadcast activists to speak from, exposing commonplace corruption, helping vulnerable people without a voice, bringing light to important information nobody else does, and creating a fantastic commercial-free alternative media source in a sea of bad, manipulative mainstream and alternative media shills and scum. What has American Freedom Radio ever done for us?
Donate to American Freedom Radio today. No rules, no rules, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, We are American Freedom Radio, American Freedom Radio.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. Before I get back to my guest, St. John Hunt, author of Jeb and the Bush Crime Family, the inside story of an American dynasty, I want to give a quick shout-out to my sponsors who keep me alive and keep the show going. PacificWestBamboo.com, if you have any kind of bamboo needs. She ships nationwide. New World Mexican Women, which is a Mexican collective of Mexican jewelry makers down in Mexico, and they wrote a book and stuff like that. Really cool people. New World Mexican Women. You have to Google that. Then there's MichiganMushrooms.net. A really cool guy, Chris, up in Michigan. He digs for mushrooms. He goes hunting for mushrooms. You could buy mushrooms from him. Makes this chaga tea that you could drink out of the mushrooms. It's really cool. We sent some to May Pang, John Lennon's ex-girlfriend. Miguel La Sala, author of The Rodeo of Doom. He wrote a book that was edited by Hunter S. Thompson's first editor, but edited the Hells Angels book. And then we got the strawmanmusic.com, good old Sean Duff, who is my webmaster and helps us out here. He has a band called Strawman, and that's his website. But we're here with St. John Hunt. St. John, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, what do people call you, Saint for short or John?
No, nobody should ever call me John. I'll give them one chance. If they call me John, I will politely correct them, and then they should call me Saint or St. John.
Okay,
but if you call me John 2 times in a row, I'll get hot and sweaty under the collar.
Okay, really? Okay, great. All right, I better be. Now I better write this down. So, you know me, man. I'm the worst when it comes to this stuff. Hey, by the way, I was going to mention to you that Michael Moore just came out and endorsed Bernie.
Oh, great news! Great news! Great. Yeah, he's very cool.
I got one more question about Roger Stone. Now, did you ever talk to Roger Stone about how he came about to handle the Reverend Al Sharpton's presidential campaign?
No, I really don't know anything about the Sharpton campaign and this relationship to Roger Stone. What's going on with that?
Well, yeah, when Al Sharpton ran for president, Al Sharpton has a lot of connections to the GOP, and he always has. As a matter of fact, he brokered the deal to get Coretta Scott King into the box there at the convention with George W. Bush, and for that it's all been laid out by in the Village Voice, called Al Sharpton Sleeping with the GOP, and even when he ran for mayor in New York City and he lost, he came out and says, "Well, you don't know my motive for running. You know, and he could put a Republican in." You know, so I think a little dirty tricks behind the background, which is what Roger Stone is pretty much famous for. So I would love to get a hold of Roger Stone one day and get him on the show. And
well, you know, he's one of the few people he answers text. First of all, he rarely answers the phone, but he will answer my text. And if there's a show that you'd like us to both be on or whatever, I can certainly forward that to him. You can email me and give me a wide set of dates and times, and I will make sure he gets that and responds to it.
Oh, man, you're the best. I love you. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. You know. So, you know what? As a matter of fact, we were talking about you just the other day. I did a show. He's a really cool guy. Wrote this book about the CIA's involvement in Jamaica. Do you know anything about your dad being involved down there in Jamaica with the overthrows and the destabilization down in Jamaica?
No, I don't. I've never heard of my dad's any involvement he had with Jamaica. But as I continue researching, because I think eventually I'm going to write a biography of my father, one that expands hugely on just the the Kennedy and the Bay of Pigs things, because there's stuff I'm finding out. At these JFK conferences, it's a wonderful opportunity for me to meet some of the most preeminent researchers, like Peter Dale Scott, Barr McClellan, Ed Tatro, Ed Haslam. These guys have spent their entire lives researching CIA and so forth, and they have things that they've found out about my dad, which they're sending me, and I've got to really say that I was a little nervous when I first started going to my first JFK conference as to how I'll be received by these eminent scholars, and they have greeted me and treated me so fairly and so warmly, and they've greeted me with open arms and total support that they're just wonderful people. They're not crazy. They're not kooks. And I got a chance to meet Peter Dale Scott, who's very, very advanced in age. I mean, he must be 90 if he's anything right now. And we sat and had a long, slow breakfast together. And he's given his life. He's a professor at UC Berkeley, but he's donated his entire life and research to finding out things about the CIA, and he had a lot of interesting things to say about my father, especially during his OSS time in China, in OSS Attachment 202 in China, and the origins of the drug trade that started at that time. And he said, and was my father's involvement in that, and I had never heard anything about that. So, these guys know what they're talking about, and if my father had something to do with Jamaica, then I'm sure it can be validated somewhere.
What about Daniel Hopsicker? Did you get a chance to hang out with him?
I did. Daniel, he's a cool guy. He's I asked him, I said, how come you don't have copies of your book up there? I said, I can't get your book for anywhere under $200. What's up with that? And he goes, well, that's what's up with it. It's $200. You want it? No, you pay $200 for it. And I said, oh man, come on. He goes, no, that's just the way it is. I keep it rare so I can maximize its profit. And I don't feel that way about that knowledge in books should be taken to that extreme. I would rather sell mine for a nickel if more people would buy it and learn the truth about certain things. But he's a very mentally rich individual who's done tremendous amount of research on Barry Seal and certainly the drug connections at Mina with Clinton and all that. I was just talking to somebody a couple of days ago about how this whole persecution of Bill Clinton for his sexual misgivings was just nothing other than a smokescreen for what really should have been investigated was his knowledge and approval of the Mina drug fights, and that was the real story. The cover story, the smokescreen, the misdirection was his sexual dalliances that he was involved with so many people when they should have been focusing on his criminal investments in Mina as Attorney General and later as governor. It just kind of dawned on me, like, oh my God, that's why they were going after him for the sex scandals, because they were using that to deflect the attention from what really should have been investigated. What he really should have been held accountable for was his support of the Bush, run through Oliver North, the Mina drug situation there. And I said, you're probably exactly right. That's what they do. They misdirect us. They give us some very minor scandal, and then they play on that while the real serious stuff just goes on and on.
Yeah. The Bushes and the Clinton go way back, and they had to have been full-time partners, and I think that was the the spark of Clinton's career is getting his hands on that coke money coming through Arkansas, you know, and
oh yeah,
what led to all his power today, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, I agree totally. That's where he made his bones. You know, he was given the choice of, well, you can either support this as governor, or you're going to be in deep trouble because it's going to happen whether you want it to or not. And Clinton, you know, what else? You know, I mean, he's just that kind of person. I think that's the state of American politics, as Bernie Sanders lays it out, is just as a completely corrupt, diseased entity. And I think that's why we need, and God hope that Bernie Sanders will get the Democratic nomination, because to put Hillary Clinton in there would be a dangerous situation. Now, the one thing I've come to realize about Hillary Clinton, and this is something I was going to post on my website or on Facebook or something, was that, you know, I could almost stand Hillary Clinton being president if, and only if, she put all her criminality, her connections, and the things she's gotten away with through campaign fraud and through you know, all the different things that she's done aside, and use her power as a very cunning and savvy woman to get things done that will help the people. But I don't know that she's capable of doing that. I know she's in bed with pharma and the Wall Street bankers and so forth. As Bernie pointed out to Hillary, you know, and to the American, you know, people in these debates, you know, how can you say you're going to go after Wall Street and when you accepted, you know, $15 million in donations from them?
Yeah,
you know, it's just a farce.
Yeah, I think she's following the Bush example, because if you read those emails where she's talking about motives for invading Libya and toppling Gaddafi, you know, to take over his gold and stuff like that and his assets and stuff. So I think the Clintons are looking to establish a dynasty bigger than the Bushes, and I think they can do it too, because it looks like the Bushes are petering out here, and Jeb seems to have fallen apart. You know, no, but
well, you know, Raj and I were talking about that, and we were, you know, in our own kind of sly way, we were hoping that Jeb was going to make a bigger splash than he has, sure, just for the sales of our book. You know, we were going, damn, what's wrong with this guy? He knows we're publishing this book, and he's not going to make a big splash because he doesn't want the book to sell. But that was just a humorous thing we talked about once. But I think he's so laid back, and he's so non-aggressive, because I think it's part of his. I think it's part of his planning. It's part of his you know, his machine. I think he's waiting for some of these front runner types to burn themselves out, as Trump may or may not do, as Cruz or Rubio may or may not do. He's waiting for them to kind of you know, use themselves up, so to speak, and then he's going to come on strong. I think that's what he has in mind, and certainly it's been evidenced recently by the inclusion of his mother and his brother George in a campaign advertisement that's coming out, and then his mother made an appearance or two in support of Jeb. But you know, Jeb's just got just as many skeletons in his closet. I mean, every single corporate situation that he was involved in Florida, with different you know, real estate ventures and banking ventures, ended up just disastrously, with many of the participants being jailed for fraud, for illegalities, and Bush skates through without nary a bruise, and I think this is just a continuation of what has come from the Bush family. So I think he's a very dangerous person, even more so dangerous because, you know, George Herbert Walker Bush, people thought of him as sort of a milk toast. I mean, there's recordings of Nixon and Kissinger talking about him, George H.W. Bush, the senior Bush, and wondering what to do with this guy that keeps wanting to be vice president but keeps getting turned down. Where should we put this guy? And Nixon asked Kissinger, well, how about London? And Kissinger goes, "Oh no, we shouldn't put him in London. He doesn't have the suaveness. He doesn't have the you know, the firmness. He's just milk toast. You know, we got to do something else with him. You know." And I think this is a caricature, a misdirection of caricature type that Bush supports, that Bush Sr. supported, because as long as you think of him as a sort of George, the junior Bush was more imbecilic. The senior Bush was more of a weak, milquetoast type person. But this guy became vice president, and really under Reagan, who probably slept through half of his term, was calling the shots. And while Reagan was sleeping or half awake or whatever, George Herbert Walker Bush was running amok, and this is the personality trait that he hid behind, this milquetoast sort of weakling, and then George W. Bush, he had this facade of being sort of an imbecile. Oh, that guy can't be in power. He can't have caused all these things. You better forget about that. If the image is one of being an imbecile, you bet that he's using that as a screen to hide behind. Much as though my father's, when he was caught by Watergate and things, a bungling third-rate burglar and all this stuff. I think that was an important image to put out, because the CIA did not want E. Howard Hunt's true persona to come out. And his true persona was he was a trenches on the front lines, and his other foot in the offices of the president and of the director of CIA. This was a guy that could wear a three-piece suit in the evening, but had changed from a pair of war khakis in the morning. Visiting the Cuban exile commandos he was training in Honduras and Guatemala and so forth.
Hey,
so I think there's something to be said about Jeb Bush and his seemingly sort of weak persona that's being put out. I mean, his mother came on and she sold, and she said, "Oh, he's the sweetest, he's the gentlest, he's this and that." Yeah, well, watch out for cobra snakes, people, because this guy is no dummy.
Well, Hopstecker said that Jeb Bush personally went to the police station that possibly had criminal records about the pilots, on the 9/11 pilots, that were trained down there in Florida. And he went to that police station and he took all the police records out of there and he loaded them onto a military plane that took off to Washington, D.C. I
think that's true. I've heard that.
Yeah, well, I believe Hopstecker. I don't think the guy would ever lie.
No.
He's very careful. He's very, very careful about what he says. That's for sure. Hopstecker.
He is very, very careful.
Yeah, he's been sued so many times. But let me ask you a quick question here. Now, speaking of Cuban exiles and ex-Castro people, Orlando Bosch and Luis Posada Carriles. Are you familiar with those names?
Yes, I am. I am familiar with those names. They were part of Operation 40 that my father had a hand in picking and training. These were Cuban anti-Castro Cubans that were recruited for Operation 40, which was an assassination team trained by the CIA. Among others, there was Chichi Quintero, Rafael Chichi Quintero, Luis Posada, Orlando Bosch, as you said, Roland Masferrer, Eugenio Martinez, Felix Rodriguez, Virgilio Gonzalez, Bernard Barco, Frank Sturgis, David Morales, Ted Shackley, Barry Steele, Porter Goss, Antonio Veciana. These guys, Carlos Bringuier and William Seymour, these guys are cold-blooded CIA-trained assassins, and they have been an influential part of American history since the late 1950s and going all the way through the 70s and the 80s. Felix Rodriguez, for example, rose up from Operation 40 to become influential in the Vietnam War in that horrible secret project that they did. Was that called Operation Phoenix?
Phoenix program. Phoenix program.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Where they went and murdered the inhabitants of whole villages and put these little cards on them in order to frighten the citizens and peasants in Vietnam. I mean, these are seriously dangerous psychopaths. And what was your question about those names? Well, I do recognize them.
Yeah, my guest last week, Casey Gain, who wrote this book about the CIA in Jamaica, mentioned these two guys, Luis Posada, Carrillis, and Orlando Bosch. And also, too, that Jeb Bush pardoned one of these guys. No, he didn't pardon him. Jeff Bush made a holiday after Luis Posada. Did you know that?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that.
There's a Luis Posada Day in Florida.
Oh my God! Well, since I live here, I'll make a note of trying to figure out when it is because I want to,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, so that's why I thought when these names came up, I thought maybe that your dad was down in Jamaica too, as well, because there was a lot of CIA activity down in Jamaica.
Well, he could have been. I'm finding out more and more things about my dad. And he was all over the place. Like, for example, when we moved to Madrid, Spain in 1965, I was just 11 years old, just turned 11, and I had found out recently that he had retired in 1965 from the CIA. Now, this was his first, quote, retirement. This was a false retirement that he also did in 1970 when he supposedly retired from CIA and joined the Nixon White House. But in 1965, this was after the disgrace of the Bay of Pigs and after the Kennedy assassination, he retired from CIA temporarily, but not officially, and went to Madrid, Spain. Well, I wondered why the hell we were in Spain, and I found out that he was in Spain pursuing the assassination attempts on Fidel Castro, Raul Castro, and Che Guevara. And not only that, but he met apparently with Corsican underworld hitman Lucien Sartee, who was according to my father, the shooter on the grassy knoll. Now, I don't know if he met with Sartee to bring him the payoff money or to enlist him in further assassination attempts, but I have found out that he met with Sartee in Madrid, and that he was that my father was there to continue the assassination attempts, even though these were illegal against Fidel Castro and Raul and Che. And of course, we know that Felix Rodriguez, one of the Operation 40 assassins, who was very close to my father and a family friend, I met Felix several times, ended up, chasing Che through the Bolivian jungles in South America and capturing him. And then when the moment came when he was going to murder Che, he placed a call to CIA headquarters and spoke with somebody, perhaps my father, who then directed him to allow the Bolivian police to pull the trigger rather than a CIA agent pulling the trigger, just because there was a way they could, buffer themselves a little. And that's what Felix ended up doing. But he was so proud of his capture of Che Guevara that he has one of his hands in his office still.
Oh, still to this day?
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that story too as well. Yeah, that he cut off his hand and he had it in his freezer for a while. Then he put in I heard he cut off both hands, and he had. I guess
he cut off both hands.
Yeah.
He sent either both or one of them to CIA for verification, and then was given one back as a memento of his amazing the thing that he did. Killing Che Guevara. Wow, what an accomplishment, dude!
Yeah, incredible. You can't make this stuff up.
It's crazy. When I went to my father's service in Miami, Felix was there, and there was a lot of Cuban exiles there that had been in the brigade, 2506, landed at the Bay of Pigs, and either were captured or somehow made their way home. But most of them were either killed or captured, and Castro had them hold up in his dungeons for 18 months, they came up to me and they were almost religiously invested in my father and what he tried to do for them. They treated him as if he were some kind of a god almost, and they spoke to me as if I was the inheritor of his values, and they were very, very, I don't know what the word is. I mean, but it's almost like the Kennedy dynasty, JFK Jr., everybody expected him to jump into politics and to carry on the image of Camelot and so forth. And this is something that I've been researching, and I think Roger and I are going to be working on a book about JFK Jr. and his life and his death, especially his death. And this is going to be, I think, this is going to be huge because we've uncovered some things. We have a source in New England that is a pilot and has firsthand evidence of serious foul play in that crash. And we've joined forces, and we're now vetting things out and researching. I've been writing about JFK Jr.'s life story, so I think in 6 months' time we're going to have a serious book about that. I hope so.
Okay, yeah, I might be able to put you in touch with some guys who were involved in the search for the debris, NYPD scuba cops and stuff. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Please.
Hey, let me back to the Bushes, okay? To the history of the Bushes. What about Barbara Bush? Barbara Bush. Now, her mother was this woman. I think her name was Pierce, Pauline Pierce, I believe. And she had a relationship with Aleister Crowley. Did you look into that?
Barbara Bush's mother had a relationship with Aleister Crowley? No, I didn't come across any information about that, but then I didn't specifically look for that. I'm going to jot that down and look into that. Is that what you found? That's true?
Yeah. Yes. There's no doubt that her mother went and stayed with Aleister Crowley at his house, and then came back pregnant after that. Was pregnant shortly after her return, and then gave birth to Barbara Bush.
The implication here is,
yeah. And if you look at the pictures of Crowley and Barbara Bush, the resemblance is really very, very striking. There's no DNA test that we could do, but the fact that her mother was in a relationship with Crowley, there's letters, there's documentation, there's no doubt about that. Yeah, that would be a good.
What's the mother's name?
The mother's name was Pierce.
Pierce. But I researched a little bit about Aleister Crowley. He wasn't really such a bad guy. He was much more than a what they call a Satanist. He was an adventurer, an explorer, a mountain climber, a poet, an author, a drug fiend for sure.
Yeah.
And certainly his motto of "Do what thou wilt" and harm no one is something that I'm in support of. I mean, I think that he was way ahead of his time in terms of his usage of drugs to expand his consciousness, to enhance his sexual self, and also to be somewhat of a rebel, of a person of notoriety that pretty much did things his own way. These accusations of child offerings and baby killings and stuff, that's all bullshit.
No, he said, he describes the best human sacrifice would be a child of 8 years old.
Right, he described the best ones, but he didn't infer that he actually did that.
Well, no, but anyway. Well, we're a little off the subject. I definitely don't know.
Yeah, that's weird. So that's interesting about Barbara Bush's mother, though. I'll look into that. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, there's a ton of stuff. So, but we kind of left off around Prescott Bush. Now, who was the next one after that? Was George W. Bush?
Yeah, George H.W. Bush. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Right. George H.W. Bush. Now, what did you dig up on him? Right, Poppy. I wonder how you got that name.
Yeah. One thing about Poppy's father, Prescott, was that Prescott was deeply involved in, besides the support of the Nazis and his the fact that he was in charge of the industry section of the Auschwitz death camp. Those things all came up, and they're verifiable and easily validated. But his son, G.H.W. Poppy, sort of like picked up the threads that Prescott had started and continued on with him. And one of them was his support of the eugenics movement.
Oh, my God.
The eugenics movement, and I had always thought that Adolf Hitler started this whole race cleansing mania that went on in Germany to kill the gypsies and the Jews and exterminate those with low IQs and mental retardation issues and so forth. But Hitler, in a quote directly from Hitler, says that he looked to the Americas for how they structured their eugenics movement, and I had no idea that the eugenics movement in the United States was as strong as it was, and who's behind it, both financially and publicly supporting it, was Prescott Bush. And not only did he financially support it, but in 1946 it was decided that a sterilization experiment should be conducted on school children. And under the guise of the Human Betterment League, the Sterilization League of America chose North Carolina as ground zero for their experimentation on children. And it was determined that all the children enrolled in the school district of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, were given a special intelligence test. And this is all under Poppy's father, Prescott, his financial and tactical support. Those children that scored below the mark of 70 as the IQ were then cut open and surgically sterilized. And this happened to 1,000 children in North Carolina.
What year was this?
This is 1946.
Oh my God! I never heard this.
Yeah, this is an insane thing that was sweeping through America. This eugenics movement to cleanse, America from its exposure to Europe and to persons of lesser qualifications. Anybody that had dirty blood, they called it. But Poppy Bush inherited and continued his interest in his support of the eugenics movement. And he worked hand in hand with that woman that founded the what turned out to be
Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is something that once it was known that G.H.W. Bush was in support of, he started trying to distance himself from that. But there are many quotes that are in the book detailing Poppy's support of the eugenics movement and how we have to cleanse the blood. So this is a very fascist kind of orientation. Another proof of what happens, when a son is raised under the tutelage of his father, and certainly Poppy's. There was only two people of notoriety that didn't remember where they were on the day of JFK's assassination. One was my father, and the other was Poppy Bush, who again and again seemed not to be able to remember where he was on that day, and it turns out through Barbara Bush's letters, it turns out that he may have very well been in Dallas in that morning. I know that he was speaking in a city very close to Dallas, and that can be verified and identified. But that the fact that he may have been in Dallas, it seems to make sense, especially since the accusations have been fielded that he was involved with the CIA, not only in 1963, but even prior to that, when he was head of Zapata Oil, and they had the oil rigs out in the ocean in and around Cuba in the Caribbean. He had used his oil rigs as places that the exiled Cubans could gather and train in some way or another. He had this whole connection with oil, of course, from Texas and also in the Caribbean, and the fact that there's evidence of FBI memos naming George Bush as being in Dallas on the 21st and the morning of the 22nd that later on he said, well, they said that was another George Bush, and there was another George Bush, but he was such a low level. I mean, he wasn't even actually a CIA agent. He was someone that was working on the fringes of CIA as the economist or a secretary of somebody. I'm not sure, but there's certainly a lot of links linking Poppy Bush to the JFK assassination, especially since one of his close friends was George de Morn's-Child, who was a close friend to Lee Harvey Oswald. And George de Morn's-Child had written letters pleading with Poppy Bush to help him, as he felt he was being targeted and tailed, and his phones were being bugged, and please help him get through this. And Poppy would write back, well, I'll see what I can do, but just hold tight or whatever. And in public, Poppy disowned his relationship with George de Morn's-Child, and of course, de Morn's-Child reached out to him one last time before either committing suicide, just prior to his subpoenaed testimony for the Church or Rockefeller commissions. I don't know which one it was, Church or the Rockefeller, but he either committed suicide with a shotgun or he was murdered, as were many other persons of that in that time that were about to testify, like Sam Giancana, the godfather of the Chicago mob, George Morn's-Child, and several others that were due to testify. So this was a house cleaning of sorts, and Bush was right in the middle of knowing a lot of these people, and certainly when in the case of Barry Seal, who had his phone number in his wallet at the time of his murder, it's been alleged and probably true that not only did he know George H.W. Bush, because that Bush was the primary moving force and the primary person that had to green light these drug trips from Latin America into the United States. And H.W. Bush's number one guy, number one and number two guys were Oliver North and Felix Rodriguez. Of course, Felix we talked about being a member of Operation 40 back in the days of the Cuba situation, but Barry Seal was also part of Operation 40 in that he was one of the pilots that supported the whole Operation 40 movement to assassinate foreign leaders, and then later came into the position of being the main pilot for bringing in drugs from Latin America into the United States in Mena, Arkansas. And eventually he was murdered because he was about to be testified. He had had problems with the IRS, and he sent a memo a phone call to George H.W. Bush begging him to pull the IRS off his back because he had and he was threatening Bush that he had information. He had films of Jeb and George W. Bush snorting cocaine in a plane that was in the Mena, the landing strips in Mena, that he had set up cameras, and these cameras inadvertently had caught two of his sons doing the drug deal and snorting cocaine at the airport. And, of course, right after that, he was murdered brutally, and it was blamed on the Colombian cartels. But the guys that were arrested for it claimed that they were directed to do it by an American military, a young man who's an American military person. And this person was Oliver North. And Oliver North worked for George H.W. Bush.
Amazing. It's amazing how many people today will think that Oliver North is a good guy. You know,
oh my God, I know.
We actually left the church. Me and my daughter were at a church, and the pastor, it was a new church we just started going in. The pastor of the church starts saying, I just met Oliver North. He was in town speaking. I was going to go to the event, too, and get my picture taken with Oliver North. I was going to sneak in there. Okay? I just, wink at the camera, you know? But But the pastor of the church went to this thing and met Oliver North. He was saying, oh, he's the greatest guy. What an American hero. And we were right by the exit, too. And we said, we should just get up and leave here, man. But we left that church. That was the last time we ever went there.
Oh my God! People just don't know that Bush was CIA director for less than 2 years, just a little over a year. But under Reagan, Poppy formed and became the director of this Special Situations Group, SSG, and that was charged with formulating plans for any anticipated crisis. And this gave him the authority and total control over U.S. intelligence. Poppy was director of SSG, and it was under. He appointed Oliver North as his main points guy, and in December of '83, Poppy Bush and Oliver North flew to El Salvador to meet with the Army officers. And from January till March '84, the CIA, on approval from Poppy Bush, began launching coastal raids on Nicaragua, culminating in the mining of the Nicaraguan harbors. And under the Bolin Act, Bolin II, that was passed, this was completely illegal. Bolin I, Bolin II, and Bolin III Acts specifically detailed the illegality of financing the Contras. And, this is just one of many things that Poppy was involved in. And as we spoke earlier, from Samuel to Prescott to Poppy, each new Bush engages in grosser and more far-reaching criminal activities because nobody ever seems to get caught. Oliver North was the fall guy for the Iran-Contra stuff, but the Bush was the one directing him to do the things that he did. And he never gets, all he has to say is, I was out of the loop. Really? You were out of the loop? Then that at least tells us that you're an imbecile and you shouldn't be in a position of power and controlling anything if you had something like this just slip by you undetected. Then you're an idiot and you should resign right now, at the very least.
What about Noriega? Did you come up with any connections? Because you see them, there's a photograph of them shaking hands, and that whole invasion of Panama and putting this guy in jail. And by the way, where's Noriega today? Where is he?
Yeah.
How come no one hears from him?
No one hears from him. He's still in lockdown prison.
Yeah.
The Noriega situation was just another example of the lengths that Bush would go to protect his drug running organizations. This became a code. The code name was Operation Just Cause, and within Operation Just Cause, which was the invasion of Panama, to liberate, just for democracy's sake, this is what they say, to liberate the Panamanian people from this horrible dictator, Noriega, who is a CIA asset and a personal friend of the Bush family. Within Operation Just Cause was a secret operation called Operation Nifty Package, which was to prevent Noriega's escape and to bring him into custody in the United States on American soil. It was a kidnapping operation. The United States offered $1 million reward for his capture. And even though Noriega briefly found sanctuary temporarily at the Vatican diplomatic mission in Panama City, they got him anyways. And because Noriega had allowed the flights, the planes carrying the drugs from Latin America to stop in Panama and refuel and perhaps change planes and so forth, and then fly on to their ultimate destination in Mena, Arkansas. And Noriega was getting a little bit, he was shaking up things. He was getting a little bit, cocky about stuff. He knew a lot of things which could damage Bush and damage the reputation of America. And when he started spouting, his connections with the Bush family and so forth, it was decided that we need to go in and get him. So what do? We create, some sort of false flag situation and call it Operation Just Cause, or in the sense of the Iraqi War, Operation Freedom, or whatever the hell it was called. And we go in and we extricate those people that are a threat to what's going on in the secret halls of American CIA military complex. And this is exactly what Poppy Bush did. So as each Bush becomes the new godfather of their crime family, it just exponentially just just grows and gets worse and worse, as you said earlier.
Yeah, Panama at the time, too, was known as a haven for drug money, too, where you can go down and put your drug money down there in Panama banks as long as you can get it there. They would take your money for you. Now, what about... do we know how Poppy Bush got involved in the oil business? Because it sounds like first it was the railroads, then it was arms, then it was banking, but then how did they get into oil?
Well, in the early 1900s, I believe that I don't have my notes in front of me, but I know that Prescott got involved in the oil business, not deeply, but when his son came along, there was a movement where oil was found in Texas and in other southern areas of the country. And he was he either bought into it or was given some connections. Poppy has this story of like riding around in his car and trying to get a job with his little family that was growing. But
Right.
He soon found that he was invested in oil and started a few companies on his own. One of which was called Zapata Oil, and I think you actually may be able to recount more details than I can without my notes. I didn't know how many areas we were going to get into. Tell me what it was.
No, then let's move on then. Okay, now what about Poppy Bush and Carlyle Group, which seems to be that same pattern where he was involved in business with the Bin Laden family in this investment group and his arms conglomerate, the Carlyle Group. Did you find anything about that?
Yeah, that's in the book. I found that he used the Saudis to in part to finance the different wars that he was pursuing, such as the invasion of Panama and Grenada and things like that. I think he used they financially supported him in these ventures, and not only that, but it was just a way of ensuring that the United States would always have a hand in the oil coming out of Saudi Arabia. But there's probably a whole chapter in the Bush book about that. As I said, I don't have my notes in front of me, and there was so much information that I researched and wrote about, and also Roger wrote about today. I have yet to see a copy of the book, even though it's out. You can get it online. Nobody sent me a copy, so
I'll send you one. I'm going to send you one, man. Don't worry about it. Okay. I'm going to send it to you. Okay.
There was so much stuff. There was so much stuff on the Bush crime family. I mean, so much evidence of criminal behavior that it boggled my mind. I mean, from one thing to the next, it was just like, oh my God. I mean, my mind was totally in a state of, being blown, and as I said, I was very diligent about checking sources and footnotes and so forth. That, just as soon as I vetted out one accusation or one possibility, then there was 10 more to do. It was really a monstrously huge undertaking. And there's been some really great books written about the Bush, crime family prior to ours coming out, certainly that we used as reference. But for some reason, people don't remember those things, or they don't read them. I don't know what's wrong with the American. You tell me what's wrong with the American people that they don't realize these things. I mean, these are our leaders, our presidential leaders. Why aren't people looking into their history and their backgrounds? Why is that?
A good question, and I often say too, how come the press isn't shouting out these questions when they're at the press conferences?
We know why. We know why the press isn't invested in digging out the truth. It's because they're just another corporate entity that since 1965, 66, when my father was put in charge of a brand new arm of the CIA called the domestic. What was it called? Some sort of domestic branch. And my father was charged with recruiting journalists, media personnel, persons that worked in the editorial areas of magazines, newspapers, television shows, journalists, writers, authors, journal investigators, and so forth. He was charged with recruiting as many persons that had influence in American media as possible. And ever since that, because my father was a prolific author, right? He had 88 books published in his lifetime, 2 of which were autobiographies, so 86 books published. Now, he was given that charter for this new domestic operation, which should be illegal anyways, because the CIA is not chartered to work domestically. But nevertheless, it was this taking over of the media and the press and the newspapers and the reporters. And their idea was that we must always spin the truth to show the CIA in a good light, and that's exactly what they went after.
It's
and
Operation
it was
Mockingbird.
only the Rockefeller and Church, commissions, the investigation inquiries into CIA activities, that it was discovered that the CIA had in its payroll over 200 journalists, editors, CEOs, etc., of different media types in their pocket. And that was because what my father did for CIA.
Operation Mockingbird.
That's it. Thank you so much. Yeah, Operation Mockingbird. That was what it was called.
Okay, you got to look up a guy named Tom Secker. Okay, Tom Secker, and he's doing some fascinating work right now. In fact, I just was a guest on his show. In fact, no, he was a guest on my show, and I've been a guest on his show too. And he does this work where he gets all the Freedom of Information Act documents involving the military and the CIA and the FBI and the Drug Enforcement, DHS, and their involvement in reality TV shows and American Idol, stuff like American Idol, stuff like Cupcake Wars. They're involved in. Okay, and they're
really,
yeah. Oh, it's man, dude, you're not gonna believe it. They looked at 1 week and they were involved in 70 TV shows that were on that week, directly involved, and that's just what they could find the paperwork on. American Idol, Cupcake Wars, fascinating stuff you wouldn't believe. Movies that you would think, but then movies you would never consider. But some movies they're heavily involved in, like Meet the Fockers, Meet the Parents, Meet the In-Laws, whatever that thing is with Robert De Niro. Yeah, but then other
name? Tom Secord?
What was that?
What was the guy's name? Tom Secord, S-E?
Oh, no, Tom Secker, Secker, Tom Secker. I'll send you a link to the show I just did with him.
Okay.
But he's been doing this.
Oh,
he has a series of articles, and he's been doing this work for a very long time. I forget the name of his. He's on Boiling Frog, and I think his Spy Culture. That's his spyculture.com. That's his website. And you wouldn't believe the amount of influence that they have in everything we watch on TV. It's pervasive.
I would believe it.
You would believe it, of course. Your dad was doing it.
I would believe it. Absolutely believe it. Yeah.
Hey,
it's grown exponentially since '65 when the Operation Mockingbird was formed, and my father was part of that.
Well, they're talking about now what they're trying to do is be at the creation meetings where they're creating TV shows and they're creating movies. They want to be at the creative process to start things off. Hey, now what do you think with this movie about Barry Seal coming out? I think it's Tom Cruise is doing it.
Yeah, I heard something about that. I don't know. Is it going to be? Is it going to implicate Poppy Bush in his murder?
I can't imagine.
I can't imagine it doing that. So if it doesn't do that, then it's just a whitewash. It's just certainly Barry was an interesting person, but if it doesn't touch on his relationship with Bush family and his relationship with Oliver North and the drug campaign in Mina and so forth, then it's just going to be a bunch of bullshit.
Did you ever see the first one with Dennis Hopper?
No.
Oh, yeah.
There's
there's a very little-known movie with Dennis Hopper where he plays Barry Seal, and it's all crap, As a matter of fact, they ripped off Hopsicker, and he got ripped off in that movie. They were supposed to be getting some money from him. They screwed him. But it's a fun movie. It's an interesting movie, but it's all crap, It doesn't talk about, Seal's involvement with the CIA or anything. I don't think it even mentions he was involved with CIA or nothing about Iran-Contra. Forget that. Just that he was he was a high-flying drug dealer, And Dennis Hopper did that,
He played Barry Seal?
Yeah. I know. Hey, listen,
That's so funny because Dennis Hopper was like, for a while he was known as the Hollywood rebel, the outlaw, sort of. I mean, he and Peter Fonda really did bring in a whole new genre of movies and pretty much abolished the old school movie corporations that had all these stars on contract. They were independent and separate from that, and people like Steven Spielberg and so forth. They came up through that new system that Hopper and Fonda had given birth to. And then we have Hopper playing Barry Seal in a whitewash movie. That's pretty funny.
Oh, you know what? Hey, we're at the end of the show. Yeah, the music's coming on. I'm sorry. I don't produce this show, so it's difficult for me to time it. But St. John Hunt, thank you so much. Jeb and the Bush crime family, the inside story of an American dynasty. St. John, what's your website?
My website is stjohnhunt.net, SAINTJOHNHUNT.net.
Okay, bro. Thank you so much, man, all right?
Thank you so much, Ed. Glad to be on your show anytime, my friend.
Yeah, it's always fun talking to you, man.
Thanks, brother.
You. Bye.
Bye.
John Hunt.
Hey, good show.
Thank you, Danny.
I'm sorry I cut you off there at the end. You paused, so I thought you were done.
No, I got to get my timing straight, okay? Because I was just...
Yeah. If you sign off with, if I'm used to it, and a lot of people just sign off with, say, well, we'll see you again next week, then I know to end the fade them. If there's a pause, sometimes I think they're done, and so I'll go ahead and pull them down and put the slider up. I mean, it doesn't sound bad because I pulled you down at a good spot after you said goodbye, but...
Well,
cool deal.
Yeah. So now I got to write that down. It's like 5 minutes before the close, right? 5 minutes. Before
Yeah. It's we have 4.5 minutes of commercials before the next show starts. So
gotcha.
Yeah. All right. Great show.
Thank you. I'll get the bio over to you.
Okay. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Good night. Okay, there we go. That was our show with St. John Hunt, one of my favorite guests. I got to tell you, I really like the guy. Bernie supporter, just like myself. So let's see what's coming up. You know what? I don't have a guest coming up for next week that I know, but I got a couple of shows taped in the can that I could always put on. I'm taping a show with this guy Monday night who has all this information about voter fraud in Iowa. So look forward to that. I'll be taping with him. I don't know if it'll be an hour, 2 hours, or what. Maybe we'll go to the member section and still feeling all this stuff out. Things are kind of hectic now because I have to do 2 shows a week. So I'm kind of scrambling about and then I have to still fill up the member section as well. So a lot of scrambling going about here. But we have a whole, people contact me now to get on the show. So I'm not worried about not having guests. And we have our whole backlog there. By the way, too, I just want to say again, too, I want to thank QK, who notified me last night about the death of Cisco Street Love. Okay, Cisco Street Love is a real friend of the show, a great researcher, wonderful guy, so polite and kind in every possible way, man. You know, some guests are difficult and stuff like that, but Cisco Street Love was always ready to go, you know, whenever we needed him. If I needed a fill-in guy, he'd be there for us. So God bless you, Cisco, wherever you are. I'm sure you're in a good place. Because you worked like a saint here on earth. I'm sure you're a saint in heaven right now. So God bless Cisco Street Love. And you can look for those shows we did with them, the kind of research. We did a show about the Maury Terry show, about the Ultimate Evil. Cisco was on that show. And then we did 2 shows about the Atlanta Child Killers. And then we did a show about Malcolm X with John Potash was on that show as well. So Cisco's a great guy, and I love him. And, he was a great asset to this show. Definitely, and even off the air, too. He was part of this little group of researchers that we had. We would all trade information back and forth. And he's gone, but not forgotten. And we'll try and keep his name alive here as much as we can. So in the future, we're going to be doing I'll put all those shows together and on a playlist on YouTube and try and maybe reach out to some people who did shows with him and if they want to say some good words for him. All right, guys. I love you all. I'll see you next week. Same time, same channel. Good night.